It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, February 28th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is starting to get a little anxious about this trade deadline with so many deals going down on Sunday.
Yeah, I've got some really tough thoughts here. I do.
Yeah, we've got a lot to discuss, plus Phantoms Tuesday and the Elliot Desnoyers update, all coming up on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That is where we post about our latest episodes and Flyers news. You can email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail. We are going to have a mailbag this week, so get those trade deadline questions in. You can send them to us on YouTube as well. We are over on YouTube as well as all of your favorite podcasting platforms here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Russ, we did have one Flyers trade to talk about from late Sunday night, was it? I don't know, since
It was.
I figured it out about it like at 1:30 in the morning. But Isaac Ratcliffe was traded to Nashville for future considerations. And we can get into this a little bit more during the Phantoms Tuesday portion, but I think, the upshot for me is that I hope he gets a nice, fresh start and can make something of it in that organization. And I think, especially with Barry Trotz coming in to take over, I think there's going to be, a new attitude there and a reset across the board in Nashville. And I think that'll hopefully bode well for him.
I think it will, but am I supposed to sit here and believe that he was the worst guy in Lehigh, and that's why you got rid of him? Like for future considerations, which is basically nothing. A second round pick that last year looked good, and just because he hasn't looked good this year, and there's a multitude of reasons maybe why. Uh, really, he's the worst one? No, not buying it. Sorry.
No, I don't think so either. I think there is more to it, but I do think that maybe there just wasn't room for him to develop, that they've made the decision to prioritize other people and they
Well,
want
that's
to give
clear.
them
I
a shot.
mean, and so now, John Tortorella's on the clock. You can't continually blame Chuck Fletcher. Lappy's there, so if he's part of the decision making, it's him and John. Like
Mhm.
whether they got together, talk, John didn't care, whatever, they let him go. He left the organization. If he does well somewhere else, then you know who to look at, because I just have a hard time believing that you wouldn't give him another chance. He's only 24. Really? Bringing him back at 25 was going to be that bad of an idea?
It's a real interesting situation we've got going in terms of not quite understanding some of the logic. And, again, like I said, best wishes to him.
Yeah, he's a good
You know,
guy.
yeah,
Everybody's allowed to have an off season, folks. That's a reality.
yeah. Elliot Desnoyers got called back up as expected with no game until Wednesday. They obviously just wanted to give him another game to play, as well as Sam Ersson when
Yeah.
they played in the Sunday game for the Phantoms, which we'll get to. They did call Desnoyers back up. Sam Ersson, not yet, but I think that makes sense because Carter Hart's going to play against the Rangers, and Felix Sandstrom can back him up, and then they don't have to carry an extra guy on the roster and eat up cap space.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if they're going to actually utilize that cap space, that's a whole other discussion for another day.
Yeah.
And, I'm assuming now that we'll start to see a little more movement between Lehigh and the Flyers since they have an extra spot. But we'll see. Maybe
Yep.
they're going to sign somebody right away and just fill it right back up, Rachel. I mean, I can't say what they're going to do.
Yeah, and the Isaac Ratcliffe deal opens up a contract slot as well, if that's
That's what I
something that's
mean.
gonna,
Yeah.
yeah, is gonna come into play. In practice yesterday, we did not see Wade Allison or Kevin Hayes on the ice, which, we expected JVR to still be held for trade purposes. Um, but I do think that it's a little concerning to see Wade Allison and Kevin Hayes not out there. But again, we have a few days, so we'll see, I guess, what happens over the next couple.
I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. The other thing about the open contract that I forgot to mention, uh, is that going to be for Jay O'Brien?
I don't
Anyhow,
know. It could be for one of the prospects out there. Jay O'Brien could be one
well,
of them.
he's the one that is in danger of just leaving, right? The other ones
Mhm.
you could sign to ELCs at other times. I haven't looked at everybody. I don't know if somebody's like in danger, but he's the one like this could be another one that just sort of just is gone. Like you lost a second round talent, you lose a first round guy. He's not a first round talent, but he's a decent player. You might lose that. But anyhow, yeah, go on with the show. Don't worry.
All of these little things, Russ. How dare you bring up important topics
I
on this
know.
show?
I know.
We will talk about Jay O'Brien, though, I think, in the very near future, especially once we get past the trade deadline and we know the contract situation. I do want to talk about some of the other deals that happened around the league and see if that gives us any hints as to what JVR might get in a return. I think for me, the most interesting one was Nino Niederreiter for a second round 2024 pick. I think that there is some extrapolation you can make that, yeah, JVR could be worth a second.
Yeah. Niederreiter's good for 20 something goals a year. JVR is not. I think that's the big difference there because as an example, the Dadonov deal, it turns out that the Flyers were in on Gurianov, offered
Hmm.
JVR, and guess what? They didn't take JVR. They wanted Dadonov. Why? Because Dadonov has scored goals in the playoffs last year, and everybody wonders if JVR is going to score. That's the real telling
Yeah.
part of his value right there. Because the Flyers could use a guy like Arianov who has speed and skill and maybe just needs a change of scenery, and you try him out and you see what you got for the rest of the year because he scored 20 goals a couple of years ago. But they couldn't make the deal because JVR does not bring that kind of cachet.
Yeah. Just as a side note, what did you think of the Tanner Jeannot deal to Tampa?
All right. So there's a couple layers. The the first layer is there's no income tax in Florida, right? So that's what helps Tampa get extra guys sometimes. Now this is a cheap contract, so he's worth more. He scored 20 goals a year ago. Tampa's got guys that will make sure that pucks are sort of loose and around and being, you know, that there's opportunity around the net that maybe wasn't there with Nashville because they don't have good goal scorers. There's always a lot going on in Tampa. So Jeannot could score goals with them easily and play around that crease area and be tough. Did they give up too much? Absolutely. But they don't care because they've been to the cup so many times that again, we have to remember this. Flyers fans should remember they drafted their core. If you look at, their top players plus some of the other guys like Sorelli and Killorn and whatever, all these guys are drafted. When you draft that well, and some of them are Hall of Famers, like Stamkos and possibly Vasilevsky and Hedman will be, then guess what? Then you could add on a lot of these ancillary players and get rid of picks because you've been so successful doing it.
Yeah. I think so too. And, Tampa has the amazing skill of just picking up that one right player they need
Oh, yeah.
every single time. Every single time. And you
It's
think,
called good pro scouting. That's what's
yeah.
pro scouting.
Yeah, it's really fascinating that sometimes you think, "Oh, why would they want that guy?" But it turns out to be the exact missing piece
Yeah,
that they need every single time. So I wouldn't doubt it. And I think, as their window, it's not closed or near it by any stretch, but at a certain point they're not gonna have all of those pieces still. And so they might as well still go for it while they can.
true. I agree. And again, it's a hefty price, though. I don't want to act like
Yeah,
it's not. It is.
it really is. A first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth.
Huh.
That's a lot.
And that's the thing, Nashville made up for the lack of return on the Nita Rider when all the fans were kind of losing it. Well, this made up for it.
Yep, it really did. Just one more thing before we switch over to the Phantoms.
Well, aren't we going to
32
talk about the other Flyers deals?
Not yet, since they have not occurred.
Oh, I just saw everybody else making deals. I assumed they made some. All right, never mind.
Russ. Speaking of potential deals, Elliot Friedman mentioned on 32 Thoughts that the Flyers were willing to take reclamation projects. And I think that, you can take this two ways. You can take them as reclamation projects like Owen Tippett, which has been successful to some degree, but certainly not turning nothing into an elite player. This is
Mhm,
turning, a borderline guy into a solid NHLer. And
mhm.
sometimes that's a good thing, but when, you're trying to build for the future, like we've been saying, you do need some pieces now, and Torts has been successful with some pieces now, but man, I don't know if that's like
It's not a
all we
great
want to
message to
get.
the fans, Rachel. I just want to go out there
Right.
and tell you that.
Yeah. That's the other side of it, right? Is that it's not looking at draft picks, which are, I think, there's some risk to it, but the reward is much higher than a reclamation project.
But once you find out that's out there, it kind of gives you an idea of where things are at.
Yep. All right, we are going to switch over to talking about the Phantoms coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, you gotta try a Built Bar. My goal is to eat a little healthier this year, but I don't want to compromise taste, and Built Bar is just the thing. Healthy is actually tasty. And what makes them so good? Well, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And on the healthy side, they only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, but 17 grams of protein. And you don't have to wait around to get a box anymore. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at built.com. You can still do that, but you can also get them at Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors brownie, batter, and churro. You can thank me later. As we were just talking about, the NHL trade deadline is this Friday, March 3rd, over on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel from 2 to 4 Eastern Friday. NHL hosts will break down the biggest deals from across the league. Locked On Podcast Network is where you can find it. And we will be covering any trades the Flyers make over the course of the week. So subscribe to our YouTube feed for all of that breaking news. Plus, we'll post instant reactions over on Instagram. All right, Russ. So the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, besides the Urson and Desnoyers news that we got, they did wind up calling up Nolan Meyer from Reading and sent Pat Nagel down and got Nolan Meyer a couple of starts
That's good.
for the Phantoms. It's good. I think he had a rough couple of games, but I think it was good for him to get that experience regardless. I would say, yes, that Hershey game was a little rough for him, but I think it was not entirely his fault, I would say, in
Okay.
that one in particular. So they had 3 games this past week. They lost to Wilkes-Barre Scranton, which is just brutal. That was 4-3. And then they lost in a shootout to Hershey 4-3 as well. This was like the 4-3 week
Really was.
scores. But won in Bridgeport 4-3, which was very important. But I will say, so both of those weekend games, the Saturday shootout loss and the Sunday Bridgeport win, the Phantoms were down. So they were down 3-1 against Hershey, and they were down 3-0 against Bridgeport, and managed to come back and make a game of it. So that was really good to see, and I think a highlight of the weekend. Now, you don't want to go down by that many goals to
No,
begin with, but at the same time, I think the resiliency is there, and given all that, splitting the points, they're still in fifth place. It's kind of a shame because Hershey has been having a rough couple of weeks as well. And so there was some opportunity to really move up that they've taken advantage of to some degree, but not as much as maybe would be better, and make their playoff positioning a little bit more comfortable.
they have one step in the playoffs, one step on a banana peel. That's pretty much where they're at. Like, it's just they really can't take advantage of their situation. Like you said, this was a good chance to gain a fair amount of points, and they didn't. So I don't know what's going to happen. What the consequences will be. So that part's a little disappointing for me. We'll see. I mean, like you said, at least they came back in that other game. Otherwise, it would have been horrific
Yeah,
against
and you know
Bridgeport.
what? Yeah, I will say in the Hershey game, all 3 goals against were partially because guys weren't covered well on the back door. All 3 of them. It was like clockwork, and so
We
I
saw a
think
lot of that in New Jersey too. So that's a
yeah.
common thing in the organization.
Yeah. I think at least, like, I feel like knowing there was a rhyme and reason to why those goals were scored and what went wrong is actually helpful in knowing what to go and fix, rather than it just being dumb luck or redirects or,
Yeah,
whatever. I think that that in some ways it's helpful knowing that, and I think working on some of that coverage. I think there also may have been some issue with communication with Nolan Meyer, like, coming back up, and playing it in those couple of games, where they wound up losing. I really think there's some disconnect there with him not, being a regular goalie there as much. But, I do think that there was very specific things that went
yeah,
wrong this weekend, but again, good things that they came back as well.
yeah. I mean, definitely good that they came back. We'll see what this means long term. But right now, it's kind of like, all right. I mean, do better. That's all I'm gonna say is do better.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that this week really showed to me is that there may be a little issue here with the fact that the vets are the ones stepping up more right now, as opposed to the kind of more lead prospect guys. And so you have a guy like Garrett Wilson who's had a phenomenal couple of weeks, which is great. And you need those guys to step up, especially if you're in a playoff race, but you also want to see some of the prospects stepping up and taking those leadership roles and setting the example to kind of prove themselves in terms of, you know, making a good attempt at maybe getting a call up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not like worried about it yet in a significant way, but it was just an observation that I've had over the last couple of weeks.
No, I get it. I mean, the one thing for sure is because I saw Sam Carchidi just tweeted it a couple hours ago, is that Urson is now down in the AHL for good, and that's in the hopes that the Phantoms can make the playoffs. So that should stabilize them. Should.
It very much should. And Um, I think it was very good for him to be in that game Sunday. Again, they went down 3-0. I think maybe one of the goals he would want back.
Sure.
But at the same time, he made some really great saves, and they did come back and win the game. And I think that was good for him to get a W like immediately after that 7-0 loss for the Flyers.
That's the
But
best thing that could happen to him, honestly.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. And then kind of the other main observation is that there's special teams. Like, we've been talking about this, but to me, when you're really falling behind on that and it's not getting more fine-tuned as the season goes on, that's of concern to me as well. And it's also like, if it's not going well at Lehigh Valley, if any of those guys come up to the Flyers where the power play isn't going well there either, it's like, how is that supposed to improve things
Right.
or kickstart the energy on the Flyers side of things when, they were the Phantoms were 1 for 7 on Wednesday, although one of them was like 5 seconds long because of
No,
the way that
it's a great
the
point.
timing.
Yeah, it's
You
a great
know
point because you would think somebody, if they came up and they have like one of the better power plays, would have all this confidence and say, guys, it's working where I am. Maybe, if you have me playing here, we could try it. Even though as a
Right.
young guy, he might say that and, the coach might shoot it down. But you're right. If it's bad down there and it's bad upstairs,
Yeah, and the power play was doing really well for a while, and it plateaued, and now it's kinda, like,
gone
going
the other way.
backwards
Yeah.
a little bit, and so that's where the concern is, that it was doing really well for so much of the season, and like I said, they were 1 for 7 on Wednesday, 1 for 4 on Saturday, and 0 for 4 on Sunday.
That's a brutal 3 games. I mean, it's brutal.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it is definitely something to keep an eye on, and, I think that they were okay on Wednesday, not really like 2 for 5 on the PK. I mean, this hasn't been as strong as their power play in the past, but, um, they could be doing a little bit better, and again, they're having these backdoor problems
Yeah.
defensively anyway, so there is a connection there for sure.
Oh yeah. No, there's definitely a connection.
Yeah. All right, we are going to dig into some of our top prospects down there coming up next.
Today's episode sponsored by Athletic Greens. I started using Athletic Greens because I wanted better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system, and hated taking pills and vitamins. And I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, and focus. It costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's lifestyle friendly whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. Athletic Greens contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
So, Russ, taking a look at some of the prospects down in Lehigh Valley, Elliot Desnoyers still leads the team in points despite the call up with 37. But if you look at the points per game on the team and look at who has the most, Bobby Brink has the highest points per game on the team in terms of active players
Right,
that aren't
right.
called up or injured or whatnot. He did have a little bit of a rough time of it against Hershey. He missed a penalty shot and his shootout attempt. But
And he's
I
a
think
minus
that,
five. He needs to clean that up
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. So there's very clear things that he needs to work on. But in terms of the offensive side of things, I think he's doing pretty well considering what he came back from and he came in mid-season.
Yeah, I think that part's a plus. But to play for the guy upstairs, he is going to have to clean things up, and that's why they should keep him down there and let them just try and go on an AHL run because he's got to focus on that now. These are weaker parts of his game that have sort of gotten him to this point, but he's not going to get any further with the other guy. And then again, when I gave a question to Denoye, kind of a hard one, just kind of asking him like you know, what is different in you this season? Because none of us expected him to be the leading goal scorer in Lehigh, and he is. Because I would have thought it'd be Forster, and maybe it still will be at the end. Um, but he didn't have any good answers. He just like says that works hard and everything else. That's great, but something definitely changed in him because this is a really nice boost for him, and that's why I'm a little harder on Tyson Forster because uh, I have a little bit more expectations for him overall than I do for Denoye, even though I like Denoye and always have. So, I want to see him like give a boost, and I think he needs to, I know he is scoring, but
Mhm.
he needs to score more. Like he does. He needs to end this season with at least 25 to 30 goals. That's if he could do that, he will get himself on the radar for the bigger club. If not, then he's probably not going to, not right away.
Yeah, and it is interesting with him because, I would think that a guy like him would have like maybe more a little bit more assists than
Yeah,
goals, but he's even. He's got
he
18
is.
goals and 18 assists. And so I think that bodes really well that he's like taking the shots that maybe he wouldn't have earlier in the season. I think he absolutely is doing that. And I think that he also wants to keep the playmaking going. And sometimes that just makes him unsure of what to do in terms of, the right choice, whether to dish it off or to hold on to the puck himself. And, again, he's got to work on the defensive side of things a little bit more. I think that's a huge factor for Tyson Foerster right now. But I absolutely think he's on the right path. It just may take him a little longer to get there than maybe some people would want.
Yeah, I'm looking right now up on Insta to see what his percentage. So a lot of things are down for Forrester. Time in the ice down. Power play time is down. Shots per game 4.1 down. Uh, his shots on goal percentage is good at 56%. His puck battles are up. His hits are up, but his offensive numbers are down. So that's kind of like what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and there's some of it with other guys, or like when Bobby Brink came back. Honestly, I do think that affected Tyson Forster's ice time to
I
some
think that's fair.
degree. And it should be going up now with Ollie Lixell and Elliot Desnoyers up.
Correct.
Tyson Forster's time should be going up, and it seems like those two are going to stick with the Flyers. And so I would look to really see
I wouldn't say they're
Forster's ice
sticking like
time going up.
flypaper because sorry, I wouldn't say they're sticking like flypaper because the coach, but they're sticking for the moment.
And, with Forster playing on a line with Artem Anisimov, who isn't going anywhere, there should be some consistency there as
Yeah,
well. And, throw
and some
whoever you
big
want
time
on that
scoring
line.
games. Like
Mhm.
let's have some bigger games, multi-point, multi-point, multi-goal games. Like that's what I'm looking for.
Exactly. I do think, uh, Ronnie Attard is playing pretty well right now,
Yeah,
as is Adam Yinning. I think Adam Yinning is so far one of my, biggest surprises. It shouldn't be because he's older and he gets it.
right. And we talked
But
about him. We did.
yeah,
We knew he
but
was gonna come in under the radar and do pretty well.
yeah, and he scored again, which is again, like any goal from him is like icing on the cake to a large degree. But he's stepping up there a little bit, and I do think that he is one of those guys. If he has a really good offseason training, could surprise some people in camp next year.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I think there's a chance of that. But I wish there were more of a chance of Ronnie Attard being on the top pairing, to be honest.
We shall see. The Phantoms have a busy schedule in March, but there will be 3 games this upcoming weekend: Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They face Syracuse on Friday, which is always a struggle. The Marlies on Saturday, and
Ugh.
then division leading Providence on Sunday.
Oh, we'll see
So
what they're made of this weekend. Like this is a big
yeah,
weekend.
it is a huge, huge weekend for them, and I would certainly hope they could steal some points and, keep the progress going.
Well, the Marlins
Le
got weakened a little with that latest Kyle Dubas trade, so we'll see. That's an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back again tomorrow. One of the things that we will definitely have is a mailbag, and we will preview the matchup against the Rangers, and we'll see who's on the Rangers
Who's
for
actually
that
able
game
to
as well.
play? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to have your mailbag question answered, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, and every result, covering every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's on your Locked On NHL feed. Have a great day, everyone.